You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. A warm welcome from another cold and wet day here in Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Eben Jansen. The show is broadcast live, of course, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Highlights are then repeated at 2 in the afternoon with a complete rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. We're also streaming live on YouTube between 9 and 10 a.m. every day with the entire show available on our YouTube channel all of the time. Now today, we're back at the North Gauteng High Court at 9:30 this morning as the murder trial of Oscar Pistorius ends the first week. We'll get an update from Griselda Lewis shortly, while we also then look at South Africa's gun culture, which is very much under the spotlight, or the global spotlight as it were now. And we'll look at the power outages around the country and then threats of flooding that's ahead for the northern parts of the country this weekend. But first, here are the news headlines. Oscar Pistorius faces his fifth day in the dock in the High Court in Pretoria today. Defence advocate Barry Roo will continue with a cross-examination of a neighbour of Pistorius, radiologist Johan Stip. Stip was one of the first people on the scene and tried to help Reeva Steenkamp. He testified there was nothing he could do to save her, although Pistorius pleaded with him to help her. Pistorius is facing a charge of murder after he shot and killed Steenkamp on Valentine's Day last year. Eskom says the country's power grid has stabilised. The power utility last night also lifted its emergency status. Therefore, load shedding is not expected today, they say. Eskom imposed rolling blackouts for the first time since 2008 yesterday after heavy rain soaked coal supplies in Mpumalanga. And heavy rains continue to lash the eastern parts of the country. The Weather Service says the rainy conditions are expected to continue for the next 7 days. They're fueled by warm, moist, tropical air coming in from the north. The sluice gates of the Hartbeespoort Dam had to be opened. Rivers and streams in Mpumalanga's Lowveld remain full following the heavy rainfall. Emergency services are keeping a close watch. Now, Oscar Pistorius is expected to face another emotional day in court today when Dr. Johan Stip continues with his testimony. Stip was one of the first people on the scene who tried to help Reeva Steenkamp. She had 4 gunshot wounds, including one to her head. Stip testified there was nothing he could do to save her life, although Pistorius pleaded with him at the time to help her and then with God to save her life. The trial will start at 9:30 this morning. Now, to get the very latest on what is expected today and maybe a recap on yesterday, we're now going to cross to our reporter who's been doing a sterling work there in sometimes wet and rainy conditions, Griselda Lewis. Good morning, Griselda. You're there. Is it wet again? Are you standing in the rain?
Absolutely wet. A very good morning to you, Eben. Absolutely wet here. It's raining cats and dogs, as they say, but I guess we have a duty to inform the public.
Now tell us, is Oscar in the court already, or is he still going to emerge shortly?
Well, Oscar Pistorius usually arrives at about this time, Eben. Well, we haven't seen him at this stage. Let me just take a look towards the back. Oh, there we go. Yeah, but very lucky. Here you go. Oscar Pistorius just about arriving here at the North Gauteng High Court. As you can see, there next to that green umbrella and the black one, Oscar Pistorius is under the black umbrella there. Not much of a media scrum here today. I'm sure the wet conditions have deterred a lot of people. Right there, Oscar Pistorius making his way inside the court with some family members. There you have it. Oscar Pistorius arriving again for the start of the trial, which is expected to get underway at 9:30. But what's expected to happen today is the state's witness, Johan Stip, is expected to be cross-examined on exactly what it is that he saw at the home of Oscar Pistorius on the morning of Valentine's Day. You know that Johan Stip was one of the first people to arrive at the scene, and yesterday he gave very gory details about what it is that he saw when he arrived at Oscar Pistorius' home. He described seeing Reeva Steenkamp at the bottom of the staircase, saying that Oscar Pistorius was kneeling next to her and crying really uncontrollably, praying to God, asking for God to save Reeva Steenkamp's life, and an indication that Oscar Pistorius tried to save Reeva Steenkamp. The witness says that he noticed that Oscar Pistorius had some of his fingers in her mouth, indicating that he wanted to save her life, but very uncontrollable. He also detailed how Reeva Steenkamp was lying at the bottom of the stairs as well, Eben.
Now, Griselda, after what was a tough first 3 days of witness accounts of what happening, the screaming and all that sort of stuff, would it be fair to say that day 4 was a better day for Team Pistorius?
Maybe better in a sense that, for example, Eben, if you look at the response or how Oscar Pistorius reacted, according to what the witness is saying, it indicates that Oscar Pistorius tried to save Reeva Steenkamp's life, the way that he was praying, asking also Dr. Johannesburg to help him, saying that Dr. Johannesburg should try and assist him to save Reeva Steenkamp's life. Oscar Pistorius' reaction, remember, in this case, we're dealing with 2 elements of crime that are looked at in this case. The one relating to the criminal act. The criminal act, that being of Oscar Pistorius shooting and killing Reeva Steenkamp. What this court is trying to establish is whether Oscar Pistorius intended to kill Reeva Steenkamp, the issue relating to criminal intent. So that's what's being looked at here. Now, Oscar Pistorius' response, the emotions that he showed, according to the state witness Johannesburg, indicates at this point that Oscar Pistorius was weeping uncontrollably. He tried to save Reeva Steenkamp's life and prayed to God and asked God to assist as well, or not to allow Reeva Steenkamp to die. So that kind of emotion really indicating, according to the testimony, that Oscar Pistorius was very concerned about what had happened.
Finally, Griselda, we're nearing day 5, the end of the first week. What are the local and international media saying after the first week about our justice system, I would think, a little bit maybe? And are there any comments they're passing around how we're handling matters here in the country?
Well, yeah, but it's not only Oscar Pistorius who's on trial here, the South African justice system as well. A lot of the international media are looking to that to see what comes out of this case. You know, what's more important is that justice needs to be seen to be done in this case. You know, when people speak, they often say that money buys you freedom, and that, there is no justice for those of stature of celebrity. So really in this case, the justice system is also under scrutiny in this case to really see that justice is served. Number one, because indeed somebody has been killed in this instance. So we'll wait for the court to decide whether Oscar Pistorius is guilty or not. But absolutely, the justice system in this country will really be looked at to see if justice is really done, and to ensure that, a message is sent out that money doesn't buy you freedom in South Africa, that it will be a free and fair trial, that indeed at the end of the day, the truth does emerge.
Griselda, Newsroom, thank you for an excellent first week's work, and we'll see you again on Monday. That's Griselda Lewis giving us a complete update. Another one from the Oscar Pistorius trial, where, of course, the Paralympian superstar is accused of murdering his girlfriend, Reeva Steenkamp. Now, let's just quickly recap. Pistorius faces his 5th day in the dock in the High Court in Pretoria today. Defence advocate Barry Roo will continue with the cross-examination of a neighbour of Pistorius. That is the radiologist Dr. Johannesburg. Pistorius is expected to face another emotional day when Dr. Stipp continues with his testimony. Stipp was one of the first people on the scene and tried to help Reeva Steenkamp. She had 4 gunshot wounds, including one to the head. Stipp testified that there was nothing that he could do to save her life, although Pistorius pleaded with him to help her. He added that the Paralympian was so emotional, he feared he would turn the gun on himself. The radiologist also testified that he heard screams and loud bangs coming from Pistorius' home. And some new information was that Stipp claimed the lights at the home were on before the shooting. This contradicts Pistorius' claim that it was pitch dark. Pistorius is facing a charge of murder after he shot and killed his girlfriend Reeva Steenkamp on Valentine's Day last year. Now, as you heard a little bit earlier from Criselda Lewis, South Africa's criminal justice system and our gun culture is now very much under the global spotlight during this trial of the century, which has some parallels with the O.J. Simpson case in the United States some 20 years ago. This because of the celebrity factor, the sensational allegations, and the fascination of people around the world. In studio, we are joined by Maurice du Toit, former prosecutor, magistrate, and now criminal defense lawyer. Good morning, and thanks for joining us, Maurice.
Eben. Thanks for having me.
Why are people so fascinated, do you think, with this case?
I think one must understand that Oscar Pistorius is an amazing story. It's a story of a person overcoming his circumstances and achieving the highest accolades in the world, and then, of course, becoming a tragic figure, killing a beautiful up-and-coming actress or TV star. So it has all the makings of a fantastic Hollywood story.
Yeah.
Only difference is this is reality. And I think, like the O.J. Simpson matter, the moment a star falls, you tend to find that the public eye is on that person like never before.
We love people rising in this life, but human nature is such that we enjoy the fall so much better, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think sometimes we enjoy the fall more than we enjoy the rise, it seems.
Now, the similarities between the cases, the O.J. case and this case, and then the sort of indictment on South Africa and the gun culture. What do you reckon?
Well, I think one must understand that in both instances you had a world-renowned star that was on trial. And in both instances the world had literally a blow-by-blow event of the trial. So the whole public was as though they were in the gallery watching the trial. So they were part of the trial. And in Oscar's matter, we have now precedent been set by our own courts where we've allowed not only video footage, but we also allow, of course, the audio of all the witnesses. So we are now part of this trial like never before. But there are, of course, massive differences as well. And one must understand O.J. Simpson denied ever doing anything to his wife.
Yeah.
So the state had everything to do. In this instance, Oscar came out and admitted that it was his gun that caused Reeva's death.
I want to talk about the gun culture because it seems in a way that we've tried to rein it in, but it hasn't really been working. South Africans have an obsession with weapons. Would that be accurate?
Well, I think just about every person has a gun. I think, unfortunately, we live in a violent society, and because we live in a violent society, people tend to arm themselves and defend themselves. But I often think that our difficulty is not the licensed guns. Our difficulty lies in the unlicensed guns, because the number of guns that are stolen, the number of guns that aren't safeguarded, and the number of guns that are used illegally is where our biggest problem lies in this country.
Now, you're a legal man, you've been a magistrate yourself. Just recap for us the first week in court. What do you make of what happened the first week? I scream like a girl and my bat sounds like a gun. It didn't sound very good the first couple of days. And then yesterday, the very emotional man standing over the body. It's a completely different picture. Just give us your professional views on it.
Yeah, but I think one must understand what the state is trying to do. One must understand that the state paints a picture. They are painting a picture for the court, ultimately. Yeah. And this picture they are trying to paint this first week was of a lady screaming. Now, why is that significant? We all know that Oscar's version was that Reeva did not scream. In fact, although he changed it slightly in his plea in court to say that he spoke with her just before he went outside to take out the fan, we all know that he said Reeva made no noise whatsoever, because he didn't know she was in the bathroom. It was only afterwards that he discovered she was in the bathroom. So what the state is doing is the evidence they're adducing, they are trying to show that Oscar's version, that Reeva did not make any noise, is improbable by adducing evidence of a number of witnesses saying that Reeva screamed. So that is a vital aspect.
Yeah.
The last witness, however, I think takes it a little bit further. And I'm concerned for the state in the effect of this last witness. Because one must understand Dr. Stipp's version suddenly could easily be painted into Oscar's version.
Yeah.
I mean, suddenly we have two volley of shots. He says it sounds the same. Remember, Barry Rue made a big meal when he cross-examined the witnesses about the issue that the bat sounded like gunshots.
Yeah.
And now we have a witness saying there were two volley of shots with screams in between. Now, what we understand from that is that could very possibly be Oscar's version. And that could corroborate his version.
Yeah, that's very interesting, your take on it. But I want to move on quickly. Finally, we've got about a minute for you to just talk about this trial of the media, the interest of the public, and what should the public be aware of when watching this and sometimes prejudging these kinds of cases?
I think one of the biggest difficulties that I've come across in the media is the fact that every person wants to view every witness in isolation.
Yeah.
And the judge will never do that. The judge will take everything together. And the court will see, once I put everything in one pot, I will have a look to see if the state was able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, taking everything into consideration, whether Oscar perpetrated the crime. And of course, they will have to look to see if Oscar's version is reasonably possibly true. So they'll weigh the balances up.
That's, I think, the difference that people don't quite understand is that we can be quite obsessed about a witness's testimony on any given day. But as you say, and as a magistrate yourself, you have to look at it in context and see the full picture, really.
Absolutely. One must understand the fact that an advocate or an attorney was able to cross-examine a witness at length doesn't mean to say he's won the matter.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Maurice de Toy, giving us an insight into how the justice system in South Africa really works. Let's take a quick look at what you are talking about on social media. Of course, a lot of people have been following it very, very closely. D says, I'd much rather watch the Oscar Pistorius trial than go to school. Can't we move school to evening classes? D, you have to go to school. Our pass rate needs to go up. Percy says, I feel sorry for the Oscar, but justice should do the right thing. No one should get away with murder. Oscar Pistorius. You shouldn't be judging him, as the former judge himself just said here in the studio. And Mlakesh Wamapela says, George Luca back in court today. Now that's something really interesting besides the Oscar Pistorius trial. I think it pales into insignificance, unfortunately. And then Zanele Ngwenyama says, the Oscar Pistorius trial is getting interesting. Never thought I would watch, but now I'm glued to the TV. That's right. After a short break, we hope Eskom will join us in studio. They haven't made it yet, and we'll get an update ahead of the weekend. Of course, lots of flooding expected. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
Capitec Bank is asking why to simplify banking. Do you know what your bank costs are?
I don't know, but I know it's too much.
At 65 Rand?
Between 200 and 250.
I don't, but I know it's too much.
It's too much, yeah.
Why don't you switch banks?
Switch!
Yeah, way too much of a hassle, my man.
We help 100,000 people open accounts at Capitec Bank every month. If you haven't joined us yet, ask why.
Welcome back. Electricity was cut across large parts of the country yesterday. This after power utility Eskom cut power supply for the first time since April 2008. South Africa has been on a tight power supply since load shedding in 2008 cost the economy billions as demand outstripped supply. Now, pardon the pun, but to shed more light on the matter, we are joined here in studio by Eskom spokesperson Andrew Etzinger. Good morning, Andrew. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Eben.
I think people want to know the latest, as always. Let's start there. What is the very latest?
Of course. Good news is that since yesterday, the situation has improved drastically. We're not expecting to declare a system emergency, and we're not expecting to implement load shedding. As we've seen, things change quite quickly. If anything does change, we'll certainly inform the public. But at this stage, everything on track for today and going into the weekend as well.
And the outlook, the immediate outlook into next week and next couple of weeks, it's looking all right?
We're doing a lot of maintenance on our generation fleet at the moment. That means our reserve margins, unfortunately, are low. So we are vulnerable to these types of things when they occur, unfortunately. So we can't say we're totally out of the woods. Yeah. But certainly in this bout, it looks like we're over the worst. In the long run, the next couple of months, the first generator at Medupi should be producing power by the end of this year. New capacity will be coming online from our renewable independent power producers. Yeah. And then with the Kusile power station, the situation will steadily improve. But for the next couple of months, unfortunately vulnerable, could be risks, could be a moment here and there.
I wanted to talk to you about this past week because it seems that there were a confluence of factors and you were caught in a little bit of a perfect storm and there was really no alternatives but to try and resuscitate the grid, really.
Certainly. From our side, load shedding and also to our large industrial customers who cut back, that has to be an absolute last resort. By that stage, we have exhausted absolutely everything that we can do from the grid's perspective. All our contingencies, all our emergency preparations has been used up, unfortunately. So, yeah, very frustrating to the public and to business. We do understand that this disruption. We minimise it as far as possible, but yesterday it was necessary.
You know, a lot of people, they want to watch the Oscar trial live on TV at the moment. They're watching on our channel, and they're very frustrated if they can't because the power is off. What is your message to them, to the people out there, really, about how to sort of get around it?
Certainly. Well, I think the first is that to recognise that load shedding is highly disruptive. If it's the Oscar trial or if it's any other part of life, business continuity, getting to school and the robots aren't working, it messes up everything. We absolutely understand that. Yesterday I was asked if, as part of the load shedding, we could disable the gantries for the toll gates, which would have been a little bit of a silver lining on the dark cloud. Unfortunately, we can't do that. But again, I think the basic message is it's bad. It was bad. We've got to get out as soon as possible. We're asking for the public really to assist us by using electricity sparingly. If we do, there's no need to go for load shedding because we'll bring down demand to manageable levels. So it has to be a partnership.
Quickly, we've got 30 seconds to tell me, have the nation been cooperating in the way that you want them to over the last 6 months?
Yes, they have. We measure that. We research that. We audit that. It's amazing response from business, commerce, and residential users, which have helped prevent load shedding over the last 6 years. As you said, it's been through their support. We need that for a bit longer, but to become a lifestyle as well for South Africans.
Well, Andrew, thank you for coming in, fronting up and facing the nation and telling us what the scenario is at the moment. It doesn't look so bad, and looks like people can get back to their normal lives from today onwards.
Yes.
Thank you once again.
Good. Thanks, Eben.
That is Andrew Etzinger, who is the spokesperson for Power Utility Eskom. Moving on, wet and rainy weather wreaked havoc all over Gauteng this week, causing roads to be flooded and rivers to overflow, as well as various accidents. Weather forecasters have warned that the heavy rains are here to stay, with more rain expected to continue throughout the weekend as well as next week. Now we are joined on the line by Johannesburg Emergency Services, Robert Mulla-Utsi. Good morning, Robert. Are you there? Can you hear us?
Good morning, Eben, and good morning to the viewers.
Thank you for joining us. Robert, just tell us about the situation out there after this week. We've had a number of incidents. Just run us through it.
Yes, we've had a number of incidents throughout the city of Johannesburg. And the unfortunate one was a house collapse in Alexander, where a 2-year-old boy died when that house collapsed. And we also had some rescue operation in West Dean, where 4 people were rescued when their vehicle were trapped in one of the bridge in the dams in the area. We also had a number of accidents in our roads throughout the city. So we also have some communities in the low-lying areas in Kliptown who were affected by the rains.
Robert, just tell us the advice that you are giving to the public at large ahead of this weekend, and what kind of threats do we see ahead of what we think will be a very wet weekend as well?
Yeah, we already have, the conditions are already, bad at the moment now. So the message is that the motorists, even we cannot, overemphasize the issue of motorists, avoiding those, flooded bridges, flooded roads. Instead they can use the alternative routes, and also, the issue of young children playing next to, drainage systems and also river streams, because we've seen in the past where, we've had a number of incidents where, children drown in those areas. So from our side, we will be monitoring those low-lying areas like your Jackskay in Alexander, Kalfontein in Ivory Park, and also Klip Valley in Soweto, and also surrounding areas like Kliptown, just to make sure that we don't have incidences of drowning.
Well, thank you very much, Robert, for giving us a quick update there. We hope that it doesn't get too bad this weekend. Of course, that is Johannesburg Emergency Services, Robert Mulla-Utsi, giving us a quick update. He says, a wet weekend ahead. You know the emergency services to call, and don't let your children play outside close to water sources, because those could come down in flash floods at any time, well, at great risk to your family. Now, earlier this week, the Southern Africa Luxury Association hosted the Africa Luxury and Wealth Summit in Cape Town. The conference explored the state of luxury and wealth in South Africa and then the broader African market by bringing together pioneers from the industry who aim to create a platform to share key insights and knowledge. We are joined in our Cape Town studio by Mandla Holamisa, who is the brand manager at Pernod Ricard, Tracy Chapini Young from Tonina Sustainable Luxury Lifestyle brand, as well as Cheryl Ankra Newton from Illuminate Africa Group Limited. Good morning, guys. Thank you for joining us.
Morning. Good morning.
Cheryl, I see you went to the wrong studio this morning, but you finally made it. You're at Parliament, not in Deep Sea Point.
Yes, I did. It was a mission to get here, but I got here.
Brilliant. Nice that you made it. Just tell us quickly about what happened the last week and your sort of thoughts on it.
Sure. Well, we had a wealth summit which engaged a number of luxury brands by the Southern African Luxury Association. I sit on the council. And we had quite a few of the South African luxury brands joining us at the summit, as well as some international speakers, a keynote speaker joining us from Caruso. And we got some insight into how luxury is shaping up for South Africa as well as the rest of the continent, and how we see these brands looking to take on the continent.
Let me go to Tracy next to you there. Tracy, tell us quickly about how South Africans and how Africans see luxury labels and premium products.
Well, I'd say there's a rapidly growing luxury consumer base in South Africa, obviously as our demographics support that growth in the market. And I think there's a growing appreciation for exquisitely handcrafted items, which really in its essence is luxury. And I think we have an abundance of local artisan talent, and increasingly luxury brands are emerging which are leveraging that.
Now, Mandla, I wanted to come to you because you're the man who deal with the good life, as it were, the alcohol side of things. And it seems that in Africa we love our expensive whiskies, but it seems that it's developing elsewhere within this market as well. Is that accurate?
No, it's very true. I think the great thing about premium spirits today is that consumers see themselves within the brands that they consume because they say a lot about who they are. And slowly that aspirational market is vying for international brands and international tastes. Similarly to what we've been doing in the past with automotive, with fashion, it's come to a point where the grapes of Champagne and the whiskey in the Highlands of Scotland is something that people see themselves in and actually want to show it to different people and the people around them.
I want to move on to Cheryl quickly. Cheryl, throughout the continent, if you can just tell us which countries are showing the most growth in this sector and why in the specific sort of areas.
Sure. So South Africa, as we know, has been quite a sophisticated retail market as it is, and we've had brands like Louis Vuitton and Gucci, etc., who've been here since for about 16 years or so. But in terms of the actual growth and the trajectory for luxury, the Nigerian market seems to be the one that's turning most heads, you know, because the number of billionaires that reside in Nigeria, apparently it's 11% of the world's billionaires that actually reside in Nigeria, compared to 2.3% in Northern America or 3.6% in Europe. So there's a lot of growth that's wanting to be tapped into there, but there's still a lot of work to do in terms of getting the right locations and the right type of housing and accommodation for these luxury brands. But you know, there are several brands that operated on the market for years. Moet Chandon does very, very well in Nigeria.
I wanted to move on to Tracy and talk about the ethical issues around it. Tracy, tell us about, in the 21st century, is it still sexy to flaunt your money and for luxury brands to splash the cash, as it were?
I think that's a very interesting question, and I don't think there's an easy answer. I think there are obviously a lot of newcomers entering into the luxury sector who potentially are still aspiring to show their wealth in a more obvious way. And I think there is a growing number of people who are looking to be far more understated with their wealth and really look to invest in things which they know the value of as opposed to others knowing the value of. So I think there's an increasing sophistication in the luxury sector, which is a wonderful thing. And I do think that the philanthropy angle, interestingly enough, has become an interesting aspect or integration into the luxury market, whereby people are really looking to purchase things which have a human connection, definitely things which are handmade, and definitely things which have a soul factor, something that differentiates them from the norm. So increasingly, I do think there's that kind of socially conscious or sustainable luxury player in the market.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, guys. We could go on with this for another half hour, but unfortunately, I've just been told by my director that court is now in session and Oscar Pistorius goes on trial for the fifth day. So thank you for joining us today, and hopefully we can take this discussion further and in the future, because there are a few other issues that I think we need to talk about. But thank you for joining us, of course, talking about Africa Luxury and Wealth Summit that was taking place in Cape Town this week. We're not going to look at comments. We're not going to go to a break. We're going to the North Gauteng High Court, where Oscar Pistorius is on trial for the murder of his girlfriend, Reva Steenkamp. It's the fifth day. Let's go to the capital.
Or conduct himself or herself in a way that you shouldn't.